जय जय श्री चैतन्य जय नित्यानंदा जय द्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा जय द्वैत चंद्र जय गौर भक्त वृंदा Hare Krishna. Thank you for this opportunity to enter Jagannath Puri through the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was only on Friday night I had a dream of walking on the steps of Jagannath Puri. I was just there a few months ago, and then today we'll enter Puri together. So we'll be reading from Isaiah. Verse number 62, I'll read verse number 62, and then 63, 64, then we'll recite together verse number 65. Yes. So Madhya Lila, chapter 13, the Lord's dancing at Ratha Yatra, text number 62. Sarvabhauma Kashi Mishra Dui Mahashaya Rajera Prasada Dekhi Haila Vismaya. When the two great personalities, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya and Kashi Mishra, saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's causeless mercy upon the king, they were astonished. Text number 63. E mata lila prabhu kaila katakshana apane gayena nachana Nija Bhakta Ghana. Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes for some time in this way. He personally sung and induced his personal associates to dance. Jai Shri Radha Gokulnanda Bhagwan ki Jai. Shri Shitalamakshmahanamana ki Jai. Shri Gaunithaya ki Jai. I'll read it once again. Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes for some time in this way. He personally sung and induced his personal associates to dance. Text 64. Kabu eka murti, kabu hana bahu murti, karya ana rupa prabhu, prakashaya Shakti. According to his need, the Lord sometimes exhibited one form and sometimes many. This was being executed by his internal potency. Okay, please respond to me. Text 65. Lila veshe prabhu nahi nijanu sandhana. Ichha jani lila shakti kare samadhana. Ichha jani lila shakti kare samadhana. Lila Aveshe, in the ecstasy of transcendental pastimes. Prabhura, of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nahi, there was not. Nija Anusandhana, understanding about his personal self. Ichha Jani, knowing his desire. Lila Shakti, the potency known as Lila Shakti. Kare, does. Samadhan, all arrangements. Translation and purport. By His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Indeed, the personality of Godhead forgot himself in the course of his transcendental pastimes. But his internal potency, the Lila Shakti, knowing the intentions of the Lord, made all arrangements. Purport. It is stated in the Upanishads, Parasa Shaktir Vividheva Shruyate Swabhavaki Jnana Balakriyacha. The Supreme Lord has multiple potencies which act so perfectly that all consciousness, strength, and activity are being directed solely by His will. This is from the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, chapter 6, verse number 8. Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his mystic power in presenting himself simultaneously in each and every Sankirtan group. Most people thought that he was one, but some saw that he was many. The internal devotees could understand that the Lord, although one, was exhibiting himself as many in the different Sankirtan groups. When Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu danced, he forgot himself and was simply absorbed in ecstatic bliss. However, his internal potency arranged everything perfectly. This is the difference between the internal and external potency. In the material world, the external potency, the material energy, can act only after one endeavors at great length. But when the Supreme Lord desires, everything is performed automatically by the internal potency. By His will, things happen so nicely and perfectly that they appear to be carried out automatically. Sometimes the activities of the internal potency are exhibited in the material world. In fact, all the activities of material nature are actually performed by the inconceivable energies of the Lord. But so-called scientists and students of material nature are unable to understand ultimately how things are happening. They evasively conclude that everything is being done by nature, but they do not know that behind nature is the potent Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita together. Maya dhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam hetunanena konteya jagadvi parivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse number 10. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya. So I'll just read the translation again so we can focus our mind, and then I'll attempt to share a few thoughts and realizations on these verses. When the two great personalities, Sarabhabhaum Bhattacharya and Kashi Mishra, saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's causeless mercy upon the king, they were astonished. When Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performed his pastimes for some time in this way, he personally sung and induced his personal associates to dance. According to his need, the Lord sometimes exhibited one form and sometimes many. This was being executed by his internal potency. Indeed, the personality of Godhead forgot himself in the course of his transcendental pastimes, but his internal potency, Lila Shakti, knowing the intentions of the Lord, made all arrangements. The Lord's dancing at Ratha Yatra, it's non-different from the very esoteric and very deep philosophy of the Ras Lila. So sometimes, we say, let's not discuss Ras Lila. That's exactly what we're doing here. What you'll find is in the Ratha Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he followed the precise sequence of events that led to the most beautiful and exalted glimpse of Krishna's personal engagements with his internal energy and the expansions of Vrindavan. And this is exactly what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replicated in Jagannath Puri. So it's a very deep subject, and it's way beyond my understanding to be able to talk about this, but I'll share a few points. All of you will know that in Adi Lila, Kaviraj Goswami explains that there are 3 reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended. And you can read those in your own time, it's very long. But essentially, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is the manifestation of Krishna and Shri Radha combined. This we all know. Radha Krishna, nahi anya. But this form is a very important aspect of Godhead. Because in the Adi Lila, Krishna explains that he knows everything. Vedaham samatitani, vartamani cha arjuna, bhutani bhavishyani, matu veda nakaschana. Krishna knows past, present and future. But there's one thing which Krishna is unable to understand. Just imagine the source of all knowledge, the source of all experience, of all consciousness, the absolute truth. He's unable to understand why Shri Radha is completely obsessed, infatuated, and in pure love with Lord Krishna. In the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Jiva Goswami explains that the state of love of Shri Radharani has not even a slight tinge of lust. And furthermore, Jiva Goswami explains that there is not one iota of personal motivation in Shri Radharani's heart. Her relationship with Krishna and her love for Krishna is completely for him. This is a very, very rare situation. Because Shri Radharani, she's not asking for anything, not any type of reciprocation, not any type of love back. Therefore, she is the embodiment of one aspect of ecstasy that no one can ever be part of, and that is called Mahabhav. Mahabhav is one attribute of Shri Radharani that nobody has, neither the Sakhis, neither Lord Krishna, or any of the Manjaris. And this is what Krishna wanted. He wanted to experience something which is even beyond himself. And in the Ratha Yatra, he experienced it. So therefore, what Mahaprabhu did at Jagannath Puri was the fulfillment of his own prophecy, where he begged to understand why Shri Radharani loves him so much. Therefore he appeared in the complexion of Shri Radharani with her emotions and feelings to try to understand what it means to love himself. And the Ratha Yatra is an absolute representation of this. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the verse that we are reading, Kaviraj Goswami is explaining the scientific basis of the advent and manifestation of this very special Leela by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for which he had waited for years and years and years. Even after descending in Navadvip Dham, he still was unable to access Mahabhav. He received initiation, still unable. Then he gave up Nyay, still unable. Then he met his associates, still unable. And then he went to Puri. And Jagannath Puri, first time in my life, I went there just a few months ago. I'll come back to the point in a few moments. But Jagannath Puri is nothing other than Kurukshetra, the place where after union, Shri Radharani and Krishna reunited. And at Kurukshetra, in that epitome of pure bliss, 100-year gap. Okay, it's a 100-year gap of separation. You will know the story about Sudama and Shri Radharani in the Brahmavivarta Puran that describes while there will be a gap of 100 years of separation. That 100 years of separation then concluded at Kurukshetra. And Shri Radharani, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we read that she says, it's strange, huh? We haven't met each other for 100 years. But having seen Krishna in Kurukshetra, it's not the same. He's different. He's changed. His crown, his opulence, his attire, his chariot. And the Radharani, even though coming to Kurukshetra to meet Lord Krishna, she said something is missing. And she said, what is missing? Vrindavan Dham. And therefore, she appealed to Lord Krishna, come back to Vrindavan. The Ratha Yatra represents the appeal of Shri Radharani asking Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. And Vrindavan from Puri is represented as Gundicha. And that is where Ratha Yatra concludes. So I'm attempting to just explain the parallel between a very, very highest engagement of pastime between Radha and Krishna and what Mahaprabhu did at the Ratha Yatra procession. And his dancing exhibited all of his attributes of Mahabhav never ever seen before. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we read how Sarvam Bhattacharya and Kashi Mishra, they see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed and gave his mercy to Maharaj Prataparudra, but indirectly. In the scriptures, we read how once one takes to the sannyasa ashram, there are lots of rules and regulations they have to follow. And the main regulation is to stay away from materialistic persons. There are two main reasons for this. Na karmanana prajaya dhanena tyage naike amritatva manushuhu pareranakam nitam guhayam vibrajate yad yatayo vashanti vedanta vijnana sunishchitartaha sannyasa yoga dyataya shuddha sattvaha te brahmaloke tu para antakale paramnitat parimuchyanti sarve. The only way that you can perfect your true renunciation, sannyas, by which you can attain the lotus-eyed Sri Krishna at the end of death, para antakale, paramritat, parimuchyanti sarve. The ultimate objective of your existence is by renouncing nakaramanana, fruitive activities, or those who are engaged in fruitive activities. Dhanena, the indirect or direct efforts to gain wealth. Tyage naike, it is only by renunciation of all of this that one can attain supreme bliss. So these are codes in the Vedas which are applicable to sannyasis and inspirational for all of us, I think. Just manage some of those, though, for practical sake, especially if you're grihastha. So, bearing in mind these rules, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did not want to set a bad example for the sannyasis to come or in the past. And again, during those days, the sannyasa ashram was considered to be a very exalted social status for Brahmins. You had the Shankara Sampradaya, the other Sampradaya going back like 1200, 1500 years of unbroken line of sannyasis. This is a serious school of thought. Then you had the Madhva Sampradaya, going back since the 11th century, unbroken lines of sannyasis. Most of the sannyasis, do you know when they take sannyas? At the age of 7, at the age of 8. They don't take sannyas at the age of 40 or 30. They take the sannyas at the age of 7 or 8. One of my spiritual masters' greatest friends took sannyas at the age of 7 and passed away as a sannyasi at the age of 90. It's amazing, isn't it? So Mahaprabhu, he wanted to set an example of what good sannyas means. And one other reason why sannyasis also, sannyas also means those who would like to focus solely on cultivating a very pure relationship with Krishna. One other reason why materialists are avoided is because of the piety account which you can become subjected to. I would like to give one small example. Most of you know in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir, he's the personification of dharma, righteousness. We all know this, yes? Yamaraj, dharma. This basically means that when you think of Vedic scriptures, or you think of any type of ethics or morals, Yudhishthir, he is the representation of all dharma. Just try to understand what this actually means. He can never do anything wrong. He knows everything as it is. Now, in the process of following his dharma, Madhvacharya explains in his thematic commentary on the Mahabharata, called the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. The reason why there is only one commentary on the Mahabharata is because Bhagavatam being 18,000 verses, Ramayana being 24,000 verses, the Mahabharata is 100,000 verses. So practically, it's very difficult for someone to add a commentary on the Mahabharata. It's been practical, okay? You know the extent to which Srila Prabhupada did to add a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that was 18,000 verses. So Madhvacharya, he wrote a thematic commentary, Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. The question arises that if Yudhishthira is Dharamraj, how is it that he agreed to engage in Dyutam Chalayatham Asmi, the most heinous of crimes, gambling? How is it possible for Dharamraj to engage in gambling? Think very carefully. This is not just saying a lie. Even that's bad for someone who's embodying dharma. You lied. Or for mistreating somebody. Or for misunderstanding somebody. Jai Shri Radha Gokulnanda Bhagwan ki jai. Shri Sitaram Hanuman ki jai. Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Yudhishthir, the embodiment of dharma, engaged in gambling. Now, please be aware that the misconception of Kshatriyas being allowed to gamble is incorrect. Just be aware of this. Huh? There are quite a few, can I call it spiritual gossips? Yeah, okay. It's okay, you know. Spiritual gossips that go around. Kshatriyas don't eat meat. Kshatriyas don't gamble. Okay, be very clear of this. You will not find this in the Vedas. Now the question is, can they gamble and eat meat? Of course they can. Why? Because they have their independence. Anyone can deviate. You understand? I'll give another example. In Mahabharata, we understand there were 18 Akshohinis, armies, right? We all know that 10 survived. The question is, who said this? When you read scripture, you can't accept every point in scripture. Reason for that is because those verses are spoken by different people with different understandings. This is a very important point to make. For example, Duryodhana said to Dhritarashtra, Draupadi laughed at me. Okay? Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata says, Draupadi wasn't there. It was Bhim who laughed at Draupadi. So, who's correct? Who's wrong? Duryodhana lied. You understand? Duryodhana, when asking his father to allow him to gamble with Yudhishthir, he lied. That Draupadi laughed at me. This is an example to explain to you how you can't accept every verse in the scripture as factual, especially if the verse is spoken by a demon. You understand? But people quote, Duryodhana said Draupadi laughed, you know? So it has to be the absolute truth. Really? Duryodhana is the most purest form of evil. In the Western culture, do you know what his name is? Satan. In Middle East, they call him Shaitan. In the UK, ghost. Simple. Yeah, so he's the purest form of evil. Duryodhan, unfortunately, all of us are living underneath his sovereign. He is the emperor of Kali Yuga. He's actually our king in this age. Which is why so many people are influenced by Duryodhan to this day. Duryodhan rose again after death. And he lives for 432,000 years, by the way. So that's a very long second life, second birth. Now, when Yudhishthir had defeated the Kauravas, and when he went back to Hastinapur to claim Hastinapur, because now he's emerged victorious from the Kauravas, Dhritarashtra, in these three parva, chapter 26, verse number 42, he says to Yudhishthir, Dhritarashtra says, my dear son, how many people engaged in the war at the Mahabharata? And how many people escaped? It's nothing like 18 Akshohinis. It's about 3 million 18 Akshohinis. Yudhishthir says, 1,600,020 people fought. You understand? That's a big difference between what we think happened and what actually happened. Now, who do you believe? I think Yudhishthir is a credible authority because he was in the war and he was counting out of his compassion. And I don't remember the exact figure, but I think it's about 200,000, he said, escaped. So it is not 10 people that survived. You get it? So these are some of the spiritual gossips that we can correct if you enter into wider reading of the scriptures. So Madhva Acharya, he made it easy for us. He wrote a thematic commentary by themes, not by verses, because then you would have to again read 100,000 verses. He wrote 32 chapters in 5,000 verses. Okay, 5,000 is not too bad. And in 5,000 verses, he commentates on the various themes of the Mahabharata. So the unanswered question still remains after 15 minutes. Why did Yudhishthir gamble despite being Dharamraj? Madhvacharya explains, because his piety account overspilled. What does that actually mean? Madhva explains that you all remember that Yudhishthir Maharaj, underneath the advice and request of his associates and Lord Krishna, also agreed to do the Rajasuya Yagya. So the Rajasuya Yagya, just so you understand, Yagya doesn't actually mean a fire sacrifice. Just be very clear about that, okay? Yagya is a term that we use to just talk about pujas. It's not the case. It's a different meaning in the Vedic culture. So the Rajasuya Yagya is a call upon the world to declare a single sovereign. Because the idea in the scriptures is that if one can become Krishna conscious and they can exert their influence globally, then that one individual can establish the philosophy and the culture and the conduct embedded in the scriptures by which all people of all types can gradually be elevated. In essence, establishing Krishna consciousness globally is the Rajasuya Yagya. So there's a very detailed description of how this is done. But ultimately, in the Rajasuya Yagya, if the participant is successful, then he is crowned the emperor of earth. So many, many generations had passed since the earth hadn't had an emperor. For example, Yudhishthir was the 45th successor of an unbroken line of kings. 10 generations before was Maharaj Kuru, who had become emperor. Many generations before that was Maharaj Dasharatha and Kaushalya, who had also become emperor. So not many Kshatriyas became emperors. In Bharat and in the planet Earth, there were a concept of Janapadas. Janapadas are small constitutions, small countries, small villages, each with their own leader. These are called Janapadas. So in order to unite all of the Janapadas, all of the various monarchs, minor kings, kings of tribes, different communities as one, a person would request for the entire planet to come underneath his subjugation. And if they disagree, then they will have to face the sword. And if they agree, they will be embraced. So in this way, the Pandavas traveled around the entire planet. The description is very detailed. They went to North America, they went to South America, they went all the way up to Finland, they went to China. It is mentioned in this Sri Parva. I haven't done the count yet, but there were hundreds and hundreds of countries all over the world that came to India. 1,600,000 people came to Kurukshetra to engage in that war. For example, Vyasadeva explains that China took the side of Duryodhan, which is China. So it's very, very elaborately described. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, after he had approached all of the various kings around the world, and by the time he was declared the emperor of the entire planet, he had accumulated piety that was beyond his capacity. It's a very important point to note. You can accumulate piety that's beyond your capacity. And when you do that, you become a perfect patra, a perfect person to be influenced by sin and by evil. So Madhvacharya explains that once Yudhishthira Maharaj had over-accumulated piety by performing the Rajasuya Yajna, Kali Praveshitaha. Duryodhan, the personification of Kali Yuga, had entered into Yudhishthira. Can you imagine? Dharamraj is now possessed by Kali. And Duryodhan was then controlling Yudhishthira. He was sitting in the gambling match, but he was controlling Yudhishthira. Can you see how powerful he was? Beyond imagination, huh? And it was Duryodhan who was influenced Yudhishthira, number one, to gamble. When Yudhishthira had entered the Sabha, he mentioned to Bhishma, Vidur, Kripa, and Dhritarashtra that I can't engage in gambling. This is sinful. What type of example am I going to be setting? And by the way, let me tell you very clearly, Dhritarashtra, I have never ever played this game of Chaucer. I don't even know what the rules are. That's what Dhritarashtra mentioned, as Yudhishthira mentioned to Dhritarashtra. I don't even know how to play. What is the dice for? What are the squares for? What are the pawns for? I don't even know how you're meant to win or lose. And in that situation, you're asking me to gamble? And while he was speaking like this, Dhritarashtra was just about to say, yeah, you're right, go home. Kali praveshitaha. Duryodhan expanded himself, took advantage of someone who's following the path of Dharma, but has completely injected himself into materialistic life around the entire planet. You may think there's materialistic life in our family, in our home, in our surroundings. Yudhishthira had taken upon the karma of the entire planet. And in gaining that piety, he was able to become subjugated by Kali. And then at that point, Yudhishthira, by the influence of Kali, accepted to gamble. And then Duryodhan, in his mind, will announce the stakes and Yudhishthira would repeat it. That is why when Draupadi came to the Sabha, she immediately saw that Yudhishthir is not the same. He has been possessed by some external energy. So this story goes on and on. But the point here is, this is why somebody who is on the path of renunciation doesn't associate with materialistic people. Because whether they're good or bad, they are engaging in pious activities, and sometimes those pious activities can bring their fall down. So even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Maharaj Prataparudra, the Gajapati, is a representation of Lord Jagannath, he gave his mercy to him indirectly. You will read in Madhya Lila that even after the Ratha Yatra had completed and Mahaprabhu was resting in the gardens, Maharaj Prataparudra came dressed as a humble Vaishnav, taking off his attire of a king. And remember, there's another problem with being the king of Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri and Jaipur, they have two things in common. These two places, in the constitution, Jagannath and Shri Radha Govinda Dev are the kings. So if somebody else comes to be a king in Puri or Jaipur, you're asking for trouble. Because there is already a king in those places. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not recognize the Gajapatis as the kings of Puri. For him, Jagannath is the king of Puri. And when he saw the so-called, the Karyakarta, when he saw the representation of the king of Puri sweep, then he realized, he understands that Jagannath is actually the king of Puri. Then his heart became a little bit more attached to Maharaj Prataparudra. And then in the garden, when Maharaj Prataparudra wanted to seek the blessings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he dressed as a Vaishnav. And if you read the purport and the verses, it says in there that when he started massaging the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he began singing, Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam. And as he was singing this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became so pleased with him. And he said to him, who are you? And what did he say? Nobody really. Just a servant of the servants. No one special. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him. At no point did Maharaj Prataparudra announce himself to be the king of Puri. He was scared to come in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu, embracing him and giving him love, was not as the king of Puri. In fact, Mahaprabhu never showed to anyone that he had recognized who he was. He pretended to not recognize him and just receive him as a humble devotee. So Mahaprabhu never at once, even on the excuse of preaching or being Krishna conscious, accepted to associate with materialist. He set a very, very high standard for us to be inspired and think upon. That there is an element where we have to step back from. Because the material energy is so powerful that you will not realize how you are also becoming influenced. Just like Dharamraj became influenced. If he can become influenced, what to speak of others? Interestingly, do you know how the ghost of Duryodhana exited the body of Yudhishthira? You're not going to believe it. When the Kauravas asked, it was Karna. Karna was the one, it was his idea to disrobe the Pandavas and Draupadi. The Pandavas took off their clothes. Then he said, now Draupadi. It was his idea. When this was stated, Shakuni called upon Draupadi. But this is the most amazing thing. There's only one good thing about Shakuni. When he called upon Draupadi, guess what he called her by? What name would you think he called her by? Exactly. When Shakuni said, bring Krishna into the Raja Sabha, that was the one thing you do not want to say when you are beating the Pandavas. Because two things happened. Krishna, he awoke. He was lying on the bed of Dwarika with his Pataranis, with his queens. He awoke. And the holy name was recited in the Raja Sabha. And Yudhishthir became freed from the ghost of Kali. Power of the holy name, huh? Even recited by someone like Mama Shri, Shakuni. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Ratha Yatra, he exhibits his mercy to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in this way, treating him as a Vaishnava and setting that very important example. Then when Mahaprabhu was dancing in Jagannath Puri, it states how as he entered into the ecstasies of Shri Radharani, he forgot himself. But despite forgetting himself, there's a very special potency which ensured that the exact order of events, the ecstasy, the knowledge, and the bliss manifest perfectly. And this was the responsibility of his Lila Shakti. Who is the Lila Shakti? The Lila Shakti is personified as Yoga Maya. That beautiful girl who was born just before Krishna's birth, Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya, Devi, is the personality who orchestrates the pastimes of Lord Krishna. But where does Yoga Maya come from? Yoga Maya comes from the internal energy, which is also known as Chit Shakti, Swarup Shakti, and the Antaranga Shakti. So these three names are for the same energy, known as the internal energy. Okay? And the internal energy consists of three primary potencies. Now, actually, there are many potencies. I'll give you one example later. But there are three primary potencies that are known as the internal energy: Hiladini, Sandhini, and Samvit. Okay? So Hiladini, as you know, she governs the ecstatic nature of pastimes. She gives Krishna pleasure, and very importantly, it is the Hiladini Shakti which nourishes the devotees. And Hiladini is personified by Shri Radharani. The next aspect of the internal energy of Krishna is called Sandhini. And Sandhini manifests the environment, the eternal setting. For example, on earth, she will manifest Vrindavan Dham. In Jagannath Puri, she will manifest Kurukshetra. In Gundicha, she will manifest Vrindavan. Okay? At Bhaktivedanta Mana, she will manifest Gokul. Absolutely, thank you. So this is done by the Sandhini Shakti. Now, if you were to, this is my own understanding, if you were to look at the books of the Goswamis, in the same way that Shri Radharani is the personification of the Hiladini Shakti, you will find that there are many similarities between the Sandhini Shakti and Ananga Manjari, or in other words, Balaram. So from my understanding, I can see the similarity as the personification of this energy in the form of her sister. Balaram, as you know, he orchestrates all of the paraphernalia for the pastimes. And this essentially is the Sandhini Shakti. I'm mentioning these so you can understand the verse in more detail. And then third is the Samvit Shakti. The Samvit Shakti, based upon transcendental emotions, understanding, and knowledge. Vit, from the word Veda, to know. Samvit. Sam, as in Sankirtan, means the entire accumulation of all good. In other words, spirituality. Spiritual transcendental knowledge. Okay? The Samvit Shakti unfolds the pastimes perfectly. For example, for the Rasa Lila, there will be the banks of the Yamuna, and there will be the pure moonlit night. And the Sandhini, having established these two, then the Samvit Shakti will allow the progression of ecstatic symptoms to manifest. For example, union, then playfulness, then separation, and after separation, Punaragaman, reunion. This is done by the Samvit Shakti. So these three internal potencies, two of them are expanded as Lila Shakti, and that is the Hiladini and the Samvit. Okay? In the same way that I have understood how the Sandhini has a correlation with Ananga Manjari and Balaram, similarly, I have also understood in my own ways, from understanding some of the books of the Goswamis, how the Samvit Shakti is personified by Vishaka or Adi Saraswati. Vishaka, as you know, she is the embodiment of all understanding, ecstasies, and knowledge in terms of transcendental ecstatic symptoms. And in the scriptures, she's also known as the Adi Saraswati. So therefore, I can see a correlation between the Samvit Shakti and Vishaka, Adi Saraswati. So it is the Samvit and the Hiladini which then expand as the Lila Shakti. And it was the Lila Shakti which ensured that even while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was experiencing Mahabhav, the Lila Shakti would make sure that all of these points that I mentioned earlier unfold one after the other, one after the other. And you'll read these from verse number 65 onwards. I will give one or two examples. And the Lila Shakti is personified as Yogamaya. So Yogamaya is the personality who is ensuring that the pastimes in the dancing of Ratha Yatra are unfolding precisely according to how we just described. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you would read that firstly, he formed different Sankirtan groups. Some of you may think that him appointing Prabhu Nityananda, Advaita Acharya and Haridas to dance and very specific individuals to sing and having 2 madangas in each of the 7 groups followed by multiple kartals, you may feel that this is ritualistic. It's not ritualistic actually. Rituals is a Western concept. The word ritual doesn't appear in Sanskrit. Okay? In Sanskrit, these words are all part of Krishna's pastimes. So for example, when you do Achaman, this is not a ritual. We don't have rituals. Everything is a devotional activity. When you do Achaman Om Keshava Yanamaha, when you sip infused water with the holy name of Krishna, the Paramatma awakens and infuses your intelligence by which you can then perform the arti or worship the deity. There are no rituals. What happens sometimes is you can approach devotional scriptures from a Western mindset, Western academic set, which is why one reason I don't read Western books. The only book that I read was probably when I was in primary school. You know these books you have to read as part of your primary education? Since then, I mean, what, A Kill a Mockingbird or something like that? Right? I mean, that was like 30 years ago, yeah? No, not 30 years ago. 40 years ago. I think myself to be too young. I don't read these books, just so you know. I don't read Western philosophy. I don't read Western academic stuff or scientific stuff at all. The reason for that is because I don't really have a taste for this. If you have a taste, I have no problem with that. But I don't have I don't have any interest at all. There's something a little bit more that I find quite fascinating. Tomorrow we have our first day of the Mahabharata course. And tomorrow we're going to be starting off the course by drawing on a board the map of earth when Dhritarashtra asks Sanjay, so you're saying that countries all over the world came to Kurukshetra? What does the world look like? And then Sanjay described using 2 plant leaves, I won't tell the name, and 1 animal. 1 animal and 2 plant leaves were described as the map of Earth. And tomorrow we will draw this. So come if you want to at 2 o'clock. So I get fascinated when I study Vedic scriptures from Vedic scriptures, not Vedic scriptures from a Western lens. People can do that and it's perfectly fine, but my perspective is different. Because then what happens is you don't mix things up. For example, the word ritual, as I explained, you may translate that to arti and achaman and taking chan amrit, etc., etc. But it's just not true. These are all devotional activities, which are all elevating your Krishna consciousness. And that is why Srila Prabhupada, despite giving us the sacred names to chant, he introduced so many devotional activities. Worshipping of Tulsi, Ultimately, she's just a plant. It's just a plant. If someone came in and saw Tulsi, they'll just think you all like a plant, and you like it so much that you sing and dance around it, But then you're going to have to read the scriptures and talk to devotees to understand why it's not a plant, why it's a personality who we're worshipping. Vrinda Devi, Tulsi Maharani. So it's not a ritual, it's a devotional activity. So when Mahaprabhu orchestrated the Sankirtan groups into 7 with certain singers, these were all done in such a way which is beyond my understanding, replicating Rasa Lila, where all of these personalities together in their various formations are going to inspire, establish, elevate and escalate Mahaprabhu's experience of Mahabharata. And you're going to read how this was done. Essentially, Mahaprabhu, he split the 7 groups, 1 in front, 1 behind, 2 left and right, 1 further behind and 1 further front. He split the 7 groups around the cart of Lord Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra. And Mahaprabhu was then able to hear the multiple resounding of the sacred names of Krishna. And when all of these devotees together, as one, were reciting and singing and dancing with all of his respective energies in the precise place that is meant to be, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to feel the purpose which he had descended. And you'll read in the Madhya Lila, some of those descriptions are just completely, they're so beautiful. For example, you're going to read about the Alata Akar. The Alata Akar is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the midst of these 7 groups doing kirtan, he would jump so high into the sky that he would twirl around so fast that it looked like an Alata Akar, which is a fire circle, a firebrand. And in this way, all of the devotees, they could just see an hurricane of fire circling around so high into the air that everyone could see. It wasn't that you had to look over people's shoulders. Mahaprabhu was so high in the air. At the same time, while spinning so fast, he would crash onto the ground. And when he would crash onto the ground, it would look like a golden mountain has fallen on the ground. And then the whole earth would tilt and shake. The hills, the seas, the entire earth would tilt every time Mahaprabhu would move his left foot and right foot in the Swami step that Srila Prabhupada introduced. With his arms raised, everyone could see that Mahaprabhu had physically manifested the attributes and the symptoms of Shri Radharani. Do you understand how deep this episode is? Let me share some of those attributes. Clearly, I don't really know much about this, okay? I'm going to have to read from the text, because this is something which is obviously beyond any conditioned soul to understand. But please be attentive. While Mahaprabhu was jumping high into the air, for everyone to see. Simultaneously, Mahaprabhu, he was demonstrating and showing the following symptoms all at once. Stambha, being stunned. Swedha, perspiration. Pulaka, jubilation. Ashru, purna, collectionam. Tears. Kampa, trembling. Vaivarnya, change of color. His yellow color became like a beautiful pink flower. Vivashata, helplessness. Garva, pride. Harsha, exuberance. And dhanya, humility. So all of these ecstatic symptoms, Mahaprabhu would manifest all at the same time. And everybody could see this. His hair standing on end looked like fawns coming out of a beautiful tree. And Mahaprabhu had entered into Mahabhav, the object for why he had descended. And Jagannath, his eyes grew into real eyes. And he got shocked seeing Mahaprabhu dancing. And then Mahaprabhu, he would sometimes run to the back of the cart, and then the carts would stop. And then there was a race, a competition. If Mahaprabhu will go forward, Jagannath will go forward. If Mahaprabhu stops, Jagannath stops. And then Baldev, Subhadra, they were thinking, what's going on? We're meant to keep going forward. But now they had to stop. So Baldev and Subhadra, they were confused. And then they saw that the same Jagannath was dancing in the midst of the Ratha Yatra. And then they realized what was happening over here. And then sometimes Mahaprabhu will go to the back of the cart and use his head to push the cart forward. And by the sweet will of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Yogamaya was orchestrating every single one of his ecstatic symptoms and experiences, despite him being lost in his own love. This is why the Lord's dancing at Ratha Yatra is a very deep and transcendental episode, within which there are smaller things that happen sometimes. For example, you will see that Maharaj Prataparudra, because of the way Mahaprabhu treated him, he was the patra, he had the ability to see Mahaprabhu manifest himself in all 7 groups of the Sankirtan parties. In the same way that Lord Krishna had expanded himself multiple times, thousands of times, 16,108 times precisely in Dwarika. In the same way that Lord Krishna expanded himself to be with every single gopi. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expanded himself to be with every single one of his associates in all the Kirtan parties. Everybody felt, Mahaprabhu is with me. How fortunate and lucky I am. And that was seen by Maharaj Prataparudra, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in multiple forms in every Sankirtan party. This gives us, conditioned souls, hope and faith that despite God being one, He has space for each and every one of us. And this is what this very beautiful pastime teaches me. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, He is available whenever, like this morning. The Sankirtan was so beautiful. And when Prabhuji was singing Gaura's name and Prabhu Nityananda's name, wasn't it so amazing? It was so beautifully sung. And when this is done, Mahaprabhu appears. If you're like Maharaj Prataparudra, you will see it. Like Srila Prabhupada would say often, that the celestials appear, the Devatas appear, Mahaprabhu appears. You know the story when Janavarani had orchestrated the festival. Mahaprabhu appeared with associates in the Kirtan. So when we do Kirtan, we should be very conscious that Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva, they all appear to bless us, infuse us, and be with us. And that is exemplified in this pastime as well. This pastime is very, very long, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but tomorrow and days after, you will read about the very perfect detail on how the Lila Shakti had orchestrated this very deep and gambhir pastime. When I was in Jagannath Puri a few months ago, it's the first time I went to Jagannath Puri. For those who have been, my greatest experience in Puri, and I will tell you, where the deities of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra are situated. The distance between Prabhupada and our deities here is probably about 3 times the distance. It's really, really far. And I was standing just behind the Garuda stump. Now, the Garuda stump in Jagannath Puri temple is not a pillar with Garuda standing. Garuda himself is standing there. Garuda, he stands there. From there, he travels for Krishna to fly around. And then he comes back to the stump. So it's a very special Garuda stump. And where the Garuda stump is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't actually stand precisely behind it. It's a little bit of a misunderstanding. On the left-hand side, there is a wall, okay, which is like this. It is the Bhojan Mandap, the place where Krishna's bhoga is made. Okay, so there's a wall like this. Understanding? Wall like this, then you have the pillar of Garuda. So Mahaprabhu, using these 3 fingers, okay, he would lean into the wall of the Bhojana Mandap and look on the left-hand side of the Garuda stump. You understanding? Okay? He wasn't touching the Garuda stump. He didn't touch the stumpa. He was leaning on the wall on the left-hand side of the stumpa. Clear? Now, with these fingers, as he was leaning onto the wall, Mahaprabhu's body became heated. He became so hot. Sweda, Pulaka, Garva, Harsha, all these symptoms manifested. And this wall, if you see this wall, it's a solid wall, okay? It's not like the Western wall. This is a very old wall. It's pure materials, okay? This solid wall, Mahaprabhu's fingers entered into the wall. And you can see the fingerprints of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the wall of the Bhojana Mandap. When I went to that place, I first put my head on it. I didn't feel satisfied. And then I embraced the fingerprints. Still, I wasn't satisfied. Then I started rubbing my head more and more. Wasn't satisfied. And then I kissed it. Really? I'm going to cover this, okay? Sorry, everybody. And then I kissed the wall. And I'm telling you, it was probably the greatest thing I've ever done in my life after meeting my spiritual master 30 years ago. And yeah, my wife was thinking, he's gone mad. And of course, after doing that, I used my chadar and I cleaned it, okay? I cleaned the whole place up after doing that. It was just, I didn't know what to do. This wasn't enough, that wasn't enough, what more to do? And I entered into devotional life because of being attracted to the personality of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So for me, actually, I'm not really a devotee of Krishna. I don't feel like that. My personal devotional life is as trying to be a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the footsteps of my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So my attachment to that particular episode in Jagannath Puri is much more deeper than any other attachment, because for me, it's the closest thing that I could come to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, And when you see the deities of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, they're not just like normal deities. They look like it is Krishna him standing himself. Baldev and Subhadra, the architecture is amazing. But I did one thing for all of my friends. I had a very good friendship with the Pandas. They actually gave me one of their Panda dhotis. So I put on a Jagannath Puri Panda dhoti. If you've seen what they look like, they're zigzags. You seen those, right? Zigzag dhoti. So I put a few of those on, and I had the opportunity of sitting on the dais with the Pandavas when the flag of Jagannath was being changed. Now you read about the flag of Jagannath in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The flag has a name. His name is Patit Pavan. The flag of Jagannath Puri is Jagannath himself. And I had the opportunity of bringing back the main flag of Jagannath Puri. So tomorrow at the Mahabharata course, if you pop in, you could just pop in and pop back out. You don't need to stay. You can embrace this flag. This flag is so, it's from where I'm sitting to where Prabhuji is standing. That is how long the flag is. It's very long, yeah? And it's the actual top flag of Jagannath Puri temple. We had the opportunity to sponsor it. And then after one night and one day, this is the flag that flows in the opposite direction from the wind. Okay? And this Patita Pavan flag, it says, any wind, any air which touches the flag, if you are in the presence, it's like embracing Jagannath. So I wanted to bring this back for those who haven't visited Puri or may not have the opportunity to see Lord Jagannath. You can embrace Lord Jagannath by embracing the flag. So if you come tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the Bhakti Lounge, I'll bring the flag so you can see. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. So I wanted to just share a few points on why the dancing of Mahaprabhu is very important, very, very deep, very, very profound. Something which is equivalent to Rasa Lila. Mahaprabhu, he demonstrated his perfection in experiencing Mahabhav. We spoke about the different Shaktis and how they all represent and are manifested as the Lila Shakti, as quoted in this verse, and how that's personified by Yoga Maya. We spoke about Sarvam Bhattacharya and Kashi Mishra, why they were so pleased to see Maharaj Pratap receive the mercy. We also spoke about why Mahaprabhu kept a distance from him. And we touched upon some of the ecstatic symptoms that you'll read in a lot more detail later on in the verses, and how Mahaprabhu journeyed and experienced this festival of Jagannath, Ratha Yatra, in the most blissful and purest way, in the mood of Shri Radha Rani. Thank you all so very much. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you so much. Are there any questions or any comments that anybody would like to add, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the very nice class. So I think one of the points which I wanted to ask was, you mentioned about how Duryodhana is a personification of Kali, evil spirit or Shaitan in that way. So when in the past time when Parishit Maharaj faced Kali, and of course what Kali did to Dharma and Prithvi as Gaumata, he was ready to actually kill him also, but then he showed his mercy and then he assigned him places to stay. But we see in the Mahabharata pastime, Krishna was actually a Samdhi, or his son Samba was married to Duryodhana's daughter. So we are seeing that he is actually having relations, like not in bloodline, but you can say like in that way he has relations with Duryodhana. At the same time, in the Mahabharata again, when the peace, I think as Krishna went as the ambassador of peace, and he mentioned all the pros and cons of why this war shouldn't happen, and then Duryodhana's answer was that Janami Aham, like I know what is right, but I have no interest in it. I know what is adharma, and I have a lot of interest in that. And there is something in my heart which is actually trying to stop me from doing what is right. And in a way, you can say the Mahabharata war was conducted by Sri Krishna because he wanted all this massive armies to fight with each other and finish off. So when Duryodhana is mentioning that there's something in my heart which is stopping me from making the right decision, it kind of shows us that he's also acting according to the will of the Lord because he's helping propagate the Mahabharata war. So with these points, how does the, you can say the understanding that actually Duryodhana is Kali also, at the same time, he's actually acting as per the Lord desired also. So, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, Prabhuji, thank you. So Duryodhan, he's really tricky. He's a very tricky person. So he would say nice things, but completely through his teeth. So when he would say things like, I want to be nice, but I can't be nice, actually he's misleading you. What he's trying to say is, I know what nice is and I hate it. I only want to be horrible. So Duryodhan, he's a repetitive liar. You cannot believe anything he says. Like he lied about, can you imagine, lied about Draupadi? So bad, huh? Lied about Draupadi, by which then she was called into the Rajasabha and humiliated and attempted disrobe. People say that Draupadi was not disrobed. You're correct. Because it was attempted. You understand? So there's a truth in that. So Duryodhan is one person you can't trust. Anything good he says, just take it with a pinch of salt. And in terms of him being related to Krishna, some of you will know that in the Grastha Ashram, in-laws, they don't always get on so well, some of these, So this was another good example. Duryodhan, ultimately, it says in the Mahabharata that those who were like Duryodhan, they actually andham tama pravishanti. They entered into the darkest regions of hell after the battle of Kurukshetra. You have to accept the pastime as it's being unfolded. So Karna, Krishna is pleading with him. Why are you following adharma? Why are you not with your brothers, your mother? You have become victimized by Duryodhan because he purchased you by giving you a kingdom free of charge. Can't you see it? That he's used and abused you? Why can't you see that you have become purchased by Duryodhan and is using you against your own family? I'm God. I'm telling you, come on my side. Karna said no. And for that, he perished. When Draupadi, an example of Yudhishthira we gave, let's look at Bhishma. Bhishma was a Mahajan. Okay? Let me tell you what happened. When Draupadi asked Bhishma and Dhritarashtra and Vidur, did Yudhishthira lose himself first or did he lose me first? You know what? They all saw what happened, but they kept silent. And Madhvacharya explains that in their silence, Draupadi stole every single piety that Dhritarashtra, Kripa, and Bhishma and Drona had cultivated. She emptied them from piety by which they would then be defeated in the Mahabharata war. Just by being silent, she emptied their piety. So these are real things that happened. Okay? So my advice, my humble advice, is that in reading scriptures for 30 years, try to not think about the orchestration of pastimes. Try to enter the pastime and feel the efforts, and the emotion of the different activities. Then actually you get a more clearer understanding, because Krishna had a very hard time. It wasn't easy for him. He had a very hard time dealing. He was arrested, And Krishna, are you mad? Do you know what happened to Kans a few miles away? You want to arrest me? Arrest me.
Guruji, I wanted to ask a question not related to this topic, but Mahabharata. Is that okay? So I heard from an authority in Chopati that Duryodhan's name was not Duryodhan. His name was Suyodhan. Just, I wanted to make it clear. So he was doing all activities which were nice and he was a good boy, but later on he changed to Duryodhan when he put the Bhima poison and Shakuni put that thing in his mind. He was not a bad person. Duryodhan Dushasan. So Shakuni was the kingpin in the whole episode. That was what was told to us. So I just wanted to make it clear.
Yeah, sure. So do you remember when Duryodhan was born, what happened? Jackals and wolves entered into the Homakund of Dhritarashtra. And they started to scream and shout Different meteors started falling on the earth. Spirits and ghosts suddenly rose from the dead. The whole atmosphere had become possessed of evil. At that time, Vidur said, that baby which has just been born, you need to get rid of it. Get rid of it. Because according to the Shakuna Shastra, these omens are declaring your devastation of the planet and your dynasty. Remember, the Mahabharata age, the Mahabharata era, is where we are trying to enter in the next few thousand years. The Mahabharata era was an era where after thousands of years of technological and scientific advancement, the earth had become very, very opulent. It had become very advanced. People didn't have cars, they had vimans, they had flying machines. People would only wear silks, All of their utensils were only gold. The GDP was at the peak, okay. Brahmins would wear gold, like the Manusamhita describes. Such an advanced environment and earth got pushed back into the dark ages after the Kurukshetra war. So we are now trying to recover from the Kurukshetra war to this day, actually. Remember this. We are trying to head into an advanced state which was already experienced in the Mahabharata era. So when Duryodhana was born, Dhritarashtra said, no, I want to keep him. Vidur pleaded, get rid of him, get rid of him, get rid of him. You don't want this person. So from his birth, he was a bad boy. Okay.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna that Partha naiveha namutra vinashastat vidyate nahi kalyanikrit kaschit durgatim tatagachati. That one who engages in auspicious activities, he does not meet with destruction either in this life or in the next. And one who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So, but here I was hearing that because Yudhishthira performed so much pious activities, he was subject to become overcome by sin. So can you please clear this? It seems like a contradiction.
Yeah, no, thank you. Such a very, very beautiful verse. So nicely quoted. And thank you for remembering the translation so perfectly. Such a beautiful verse. When Yudhishthira was told by Kunti that, do you know Karna was your brother? You want to hear what he said? It's not nice. He said, if I had Karna and Arjun on my side together, I could defeat Krishna. I will show you the verse tomorrow. I mean, seriously? Why would you say that? So the verse is absolutely perfect, and your understanding also is perfect. But what happens sometimes is our understanding of the characters may not be entirely how we think they are. You see? So Arjun, I mean, this is going to be a long story, okay, but maybe in 60 seconds. Arjun, as you know, he appeared, according to the Brahma Vivarta Puran, after being chastised by Krishna in the form of Indra, after Govardhan Lila. After Govardhan Lila, Indra said, forgive me. He bathed him with the waters of Airavata. And Indra said, please teach me your sciences. Then he came as Arjun. So even Arjun, even he was slowly evolving in his devotional mentality based upon his origin. Yudhishthira as well. So yes, all of these are associates of Lord Shri Krishna, absolutely. But there is still uniqueness in every character. Every single person who is here, they all at different stages of their devotional understandings. And the beautiful part here is, even if a devotee makes a mistake, kim punarbrahmana punya bhakta raj rishayasthatha. Krishna says in the Gita, bhakta raj rishayasthatha. It doesn't matter. Anitya usakum lokam. It doesn't matter. If they are rightly situated, as you mentioned, and their intentions are correct, while they are progressing in the devotional life, they will make mistakes. They will say things that are not actually conducive for the spiritual life. But I will be there. I will be there to pick them up. So my understanding is that people don't appear as entirely perfect. That is Krishna. That is Shri Radharani. And various devotees, according to their various levels of the spiritual life, they may make apparent mistakes, misunderstandings, and say things that are not purely Krishna conscious aligned. In those situations, Krishna will ensure that their end is well by ensuring that they continually advance in the spiritual life. Jiva Goswami explains, in the scriptures it says, you chant Krishna's name, you immediately become pure. Right? But that's not true. Think about it. Right? Huh? So, what does Jiva say? Jiva Goswami says, imagine 100 leaves of lotuses. You get a needle. You put the needle through 100 leaves. How long does it take? Done. From the absolute sense, needle has gone through the leaves. Right? But the needle went through the leaf one at a time. One at a time. Similarly, for one who remains on the path of devotional service, one by one, their bija karma, their kurta karma, their sanchit karma, their prarabdha karma, their agami karma, and their aprarabdha karma, one by one gets destroyed when you engage in devotional service. So these are some of the ways to solve the contradictions. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
There's two comments actually. There's the Jagannath Astika, and it said that actually that this was done by Mayavadi. That in fact, but it's so devotional. Maybe you could clear out that comment.
Yeah. Adi Shankara.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adi Shankara. So Adi Shankara is Lord Shiva himself.
Yeah.
So Vaishvanam Yatha Shambhu. So so he preached that particular philosophy, as you know, for a reason, to re-establish faith in the Vedas.
That's it, yeah.
But he was always aware of the supremacy of devotion to Krishna.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada comments on him as well in the Bhagavad Gita, that Narayana that Narayana is the beyond material nature, etc. So he had devotional sentiments, he was devotionally inclined, but he had a service to do, and as part of his devotion he sung Jagannath Ashtakam.
Yeah, and also the comment is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, divisions of faith.
Yeah.
You know, in goodness, passion, and ignorance. And as we can see this in this world, you know, where people commit suicide to kill other people, and all this sort of thing. That's gross. And they laugh at people who are being killed when they're killed, like the Ashis. I remember seeing that once when I was in South Korea.
Wow.
And it was hideous, because I felt hatred towards those people that were doing it.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful what you watch, because it can stir feelings of the hatred for others.
You know, when Karna said to Yudhishthir, bring your wife here, wage your wife, Yudhishthir became so angry with Karna. He became beyond anger, but something beautiful took place. Karna, he looked at the feet, Yudhishthir looked at the feet of Karna, and guess what he said? Your feet resemble the feet of my mother. And when he saw that Karna's feet were the exact same feet of Kunti, his anger vanished. And then he just kept quiet, and he let whatever happened happens. He kept quiet throughout the entire time from that point onwards, because he knew that in this conversation, who was waged first, who was waged second, the Kauravas will get defeated. He was very, very smart. At that point, Kali had dismissed from his body. So a very nice way, he saw the lotus feet of a devotee of Krishna, and that gave him peace midst the assembly of the Kauravas when he was being tortured and his wife was being humiliated. So you see, everyone is progressing in their spiritual lives. And the Mahabharata shows different degrees of characters to give us all an opportunity to align with those and consider there's hope for us. Shall we end? Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful Ekadashi today. Don't eat lots. And celebrate tomorrow with so much jubilation, the appearance of Lord Varahadev. Yes, it's fasting anyway, absolutely. Thank you so much. Ogla Shri Prabhupada. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.